Well, welcome to this very important session on wearable devices, non-invasive that too, and with artificial intelligence. And I'm here accompanied by Manoj Chawla. I'm going to have him chair the session as well as introduce both the speakers. Manoj, please.
Thank you, Professor Satish Garg, and afternoon, everyone. We have an interesting session ahead, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome and invite you to this session on the future of wearable devices for continuous glucose monitoring. And the first speaker for this, who would be speaking and focusing on non-invasive strategies, let's welcome Dr. Sheikh Mohammad Shariful Islam from Bangladesh, who would be speaking to us on the non-invasive strategies for the future of wearable devices. Dr. Sheikh Mohammed.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj and Professor Satish. It's a great honor to be here among such an esteemed audience. My name is Shariful, and I'm an adjunct professor at Swinburne University of Technology in Melbourne and Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich. I'm also an honorary professor at the Bangladesh University of Health Science and GBD principal collaborator at the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, University of Washington. Over the last decade, my group has been working on wearable devices, technologies, and artificial intelligence. And today I'm going to present about non-invasive strategies for managing diabetes. I don't have any conflicts of interests to declare. So globally, over 500 million people live with diabetes, and this number is increasing rapidly. Yet a significant proportion of people with diabetes live in low and middle income countries and cannot afford blood glucose monitoring tools. The traditional methods like finger prick tests and invasive continuous glucose monitors are either painful, too expensive, or are not practicable for a lot of people. So this creates a major barrier to routine monitoring, leading to poor glycemic control and a higher risk of complications. And there is a clear and urgent need for non-invasive, accurate, and accessible solutions that empower people to manage their diabetes anytime, anywhere. So glucose monitoring has traditionally been done using invasive or minimally invasive methods, but recently we have seen a number of non-invasive technologies being used. Most common ones are from tissues or fluids, and there are several methods which I'll go through a bit details later. So these are mostly like electrochemical methods, electromechanical methods, optical methods, and different other technologies. If we look at how the wearable technologies has emerged for monitoring blood glucose non-invasively, I think it's quite recent. So I think the blood glucose monitoring started from 1956, and it's only until 2012 we have seen advances in wearable platforms like the glucose contact lenses, the microneedle sensors, the tooth enamel sensors, and other like skin patches that have recently been used. We have also seen recent advancements in sensors like RFID sensors that can detect blood glucose through different technologies. We conducted a systematic review in 2013 to identify studies that have used a non-invasive method for blood glucose monitoring and have validated them against traditional methods. So the study identified about 2,036 articles that used different methods for non-invasive blood glucose monitoring, but only 9 studies met the selection criteria. So the number of quality studies are still very less. I think the 3 most common approaches were detecting blood glucose using saliva, skin, and breath. And among these 9 studies, statistical relationship was found between blood glucose measurements obtained from non-invasive methods and standard clinical measures. The results are promising, and they show that non-invasive methods are valid, but I mean there are a lot of hurdles that we need to cross for these devices to become clinical products. And further research are needed, and especially the study suggested that these non-invasive technologies, along with using the recent Internet of Things, could really change how diabetes is managed in the clinics. Several studies have reported that wearables can non-invasively capture metrics reflecting autonomic nervous system activity, which is a demonstrated correlate of glycemic health. This is a proof of concept study by Bent and colleagues who explored the relationships between non-invasive wearables and glycemic metrics. Authors recorded over 25,000 measurements with a continuous glucose monitor with simultaneous wrist-worn wearables that measured like skin temperature, electrodermal activity, heart rate, and accelerometer sensors. And data was collected over 8 to 10 days in 16 participants with normal glycemic state and pre-diabetes. So data from this device was used to create the machine learning models. And the machine learning models could predict HbA1c that's recorded on day 1, on day 0, and glucose variability calculated from the continuous glucose monitors. So it had 250 days of data from 26 participants. And the authors used, I think, 27 AI or machine learning models, out of which 11 models demonstrated high level of accuracy. That was, I think, less than 10% of mean average percent error. And the HbA1c estimation model using non-invasive wearable data achieved a MAPE of 5.1% on external validation cohort. So this study demonstrates that wearable devices could potentially be used as a strategy to remotely monitor diabetes and detect undiagnosed prediabetes. The recent breakthroughs have come through most of the engineering studies that have used optical sensors. So optical sensors detect glucose by analyzing light absorption, reflection, or scattering through the tissue. The figure on the left shows the different types of non-invasive technologies that are currently being used. I think among them, the near-infrared spectroscopy are gaining quite momentum in the engineering field. Others are like mid-infrared and Raman spectroscopy and photoacoustic spectroscopy. The way it works that glucose molecules interact with specific wavelengths of light, and changes in light spectrum are measured and correlated with glucose concentration. Typically, these are measured through skin using a wrist or earlobe or fingertip method. Some recent advances include integration with wearable devices, for example, a smartwatch, using miniature sensors. So initially, when this optical sensors were developed, it was very big, like a room, but recently these have become very small and can be integrated within any wearable device like a smartwatch. The promising early phase trials have shown good correlation with capillary glucose levels, and this technology is still being pilot tested and getting advanced. The other breakthrough has come through sweat-based biosensors. So sweat-based biosensors are another promising non-invasive approach for continuous glucose monitoring. They utilize trace glucose levels present in eccrine sweat as a surrogate for blood glucose. And the mechanism of action is the enzymatic or electrochemical sensors detect glucose in sweat. Data is captured via wearable patches or flexible electronic skins. These are often integrated with a Bluetooth or NFC for real-time data transmission to a smartphone or to a server where they can be further analyzed. The advantages of sweat-based biosensors are that they are completely non-invasive and painless. And they offer real-time continuous data collection, and they're suitable for early stage pre-diabetes and gestational diabetes monitoring. The limitations include that these are very highly sensitive and may require more sensitive sensors.
对，这是大考试，好不容易把它拉回来。对，我现在在帮他弄。我可能如果来不及的话，我就晚一点就吃完，那七八点吧。
Identify disease patterns, predict future disease complications, and AI has also had a great role in wearable devices and
就是跟那个什么联考是一样的意思，所以我一定要盯着它。好，对对对。我晚一点再回去。
So the way AI works in non-invasive blood glucose measurement is AI improves signal processing, helping to filter noise and extract accurate glucose trends from weak biosensor signals, such as those from sweat or optical sensors. It also provides predictive algorithms that can learn individual patterns by integrating multiple data sources, like heart rate variability or physical activity, skin temperature. This allows personalized glucose tracking without any fingerprints.
肚子不舒服，研究一下是哪一种不舒服
Another
啦。
strength of AI is the data fusion. So AI combines
那就自己
output
搓一搓，揉一揉咯。
from multiple sensors to increase the accuracy.
我让你休息15分钟。
It also enables real-time alerts, so forecasting interventions. Many wearable devices now use adaptive learning models that improves over time and can deliver more precise recordings as time advances. In our lab, we have also been using explainable AI. So this explainable AI helps to provide a range for the outcomes that we get, so providing clinicians with more confidence in the AI results for making clinical decisions. These are some of the studies where we used AI to predict diabetes from different data sources in our group. I'll not go through the details. While wearable non-invasive glucose monitoring holds tremendous promise, several key challenges still remain. First, accuracy and reliability are major concerns. Many non-invasive sensors, such as those using sweat, saliva, or optical signals, are highly sensitive to environmental and physiological variations like temperature, hydration, or skin
晚一
thickness,
点我会去看。
leading to inconsistent readings. And often we found that readings in a lab setting doesn't always work in a clinical setting when we have very different group of people. Secondly, there is a challenge in sensor calibration and standardization. Unlike the fingerprint methods, these devices often require frequent recalibration or machine learning models trained on a very large, diverse data set to maintain accuracy across different user groups. Third is the lag time between glucose levels in blood and alternative fluids such as sweat or interstitial fluid that can delay
我们那时候
real-time
去泰
detection,
国
and it's critical for preventing hypo or hyperglycemia. Additionally, the user compliance and wearability remains important, so devices need to be very comfortable, discreet,
当然
and capable of long-time monitoring. I think everyone also knows about the digital divide, so a lot of patients in low and middle income countries might not be able to afford these devices, these technologies when made available by
我
the
突然想到
government.
你正好，感谢你。
As we look ahead, several exciting directions are shaping the future of non-invasive glucose monitoring. I think first the integration of multimodal sensors, so that is combining optical, sweat-based and electrochemical sensors. When we combine the different sensors, I think we're trying to get more accurate results over a long period of time. And second, using AI and machine learning will play a critical role. So these technologies can personalize glucose predictions, filter out the different noise, and adapt models to individual physiology, improving real-time reliability. Third, miniaturization and flexible electronics. So the advancement in this electronic research will enable the development of maybe more smart skin patches and maybe contact lenses that are easy to wear and cheap. The other direction is about closed loop systems, where continuous glucose monitoring is paired with automated insulin delivery or behavior nudges. So bringing us closer to a fully automated system where the system can predict the behavior of a person and adjust insulin delivery. And I think recently the research has been moving from more static machine learning to an adaptable machine learning. So as the person continues to use the wearable device and gathers other data, the machine learning also improves and can provide a more personalized intervention. To truly realize the promise of non-invasive glucose monitoring, I think we need collective action. First, we call on researchers and clinicians to collaborate across disciplines, so engineering, medicine, and data science to accelerate innovation and validation of emerging technologies. Second, industry partners must prioritize user-centered design and affordability to ensure that these devices are accessible to all, not just those in high-income settings. Third, the policymakers and regulators should provide clear evidence-based framework to fast-track the safe approval and integration of these technologies into the health system. I know it's very challenging, even in a first world country like Australia, where I stay, we still haven't seen technologies or wearable device data coming to a real clinical system and being used. One of the main concerns is us clinicians, we feel that technology might increase our workload, and if we are not sure how accurate the model is, there is a lot of issues like who is going to take responsibility if the AI model makes a mistake. So I think these are things that we need to agree as a clinician or as a group to see how we can address these AI challenges. And finally, we also need sustained investments, so from public and private sectors, to support large-scale clinical trials, and together we can promise to practice transforming diabetes care through smarter, seamless, and truly non-invasive solutions. I'd like to acknowledge my funders and my collaborators who have funded all my research and my group. And the question is, will non-invasive continuous glucose monitor replace blood glucose meters by 2030? So I raise this question to you when finishing the presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sheikh, for a very elaborative talk. I'm sure the audience is still waiting to hear. Is there a promising tool that might be there that might solve the problem of non-invasive continuous glucose monitor?
I think we are not very far from there. A large number of studies have proven that the technology works, but I mean, most of those studies are pilot studies, proof of concept studies. Unless we get a number of very high quality studies showing the evidence, I think we still might need to wait a few years. The other thing is, like the blood glucometer has been standardized over years, but with these non-invasive technologies, we still don't have a guideline how we should standardize those measurements, what we should look at. So I think it's a promising field, but maybe not yet ready for clinical adoption at this moment.
Well, thank you. So what we're going to do is, after each speaker will give another 2 or 3 minutes so that they don't have to come back up. Are there any questions from the audience? There is one online. Go ahead, Edmund.
So you can scan the code again. Can the AV team show the QR code again for slides? You can put the questions through that or take it at the mic. Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself and ask the question.
Hi, my name is Alok Sinha. I'm a PhD scholar. One of the questions I have is that while the non-invasive technologies are improving, but there's still going to be a problem half solved, because when you look at an autonomous insulin delivery, you will still need a puncture. You will still need those wearable devices that has to go into it. So unless we have, and that's a query to you, that unless we have complementary insulin absorption system as well, along with this, the overall problem will still remain alive. What's your thoughts on this?
Thank you for this very interesting question. I totally agree with you. But a lot of people don't also need insulin. So I think those people will be benefited from a non-invasive glucose monitoring system. Definitely people who need insulin, I guess, wouldn't mind using an invasive or semi-invasive system.
And also possibly the longer duration of this, because anything which is a invasive stuff will have a shorter duration due to infection, stuff like that.
Yes.
Probably on that side.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So another question, Dr. Sheikh, is also on in terms of non-invasive means. There are a lot of companies assessing face scans for multimodality or metabolic profiles. Your thoughts on the same about the face scan non-invasive technology?
I've heard about that. I'm not sure how much advance they have made in terms of validating those measurements, because how AI works is if you give it some information, it will come out with some outcomes. But I mean, is that outcome clinically validated? Is it changing over time? Is it giving consistent results? That is what we need to see.
Okay, 2 questions from the app here. One is there any non-invasive device that's been approved by the FDA so far?
I'm not aware of any such device.
Right.
No, there is none.
So the authority speaks that there is none. And somebody's asking who really are the intended users of these? Any non-invasive technology, is it accurate enough now or in the near future probably for type 1 diabetes management? So can it be validated and accurate for T1Ds?
I think research is still ongoing. These validations have been done in lab settings in small number of participants, but not in bigger participants we're still far away from making that recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sheikh. And thank you all for your questions. And we do see some more questions, which we'll try and take up at the end of the second talk. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So from having heard the conversation on non-invasive means for wearable devices, we move to minimally invasive devices. And for that, it gives me great pleasure to invite Dr. Shalini Jaggi to come up here. Shalini is a close friend, a consultant and director at the Lifecare Diabetes Center, New Delhi. She is the president-elect for the Diabetes in Pregnancy Study Group India, the DIPSI, chairman-elect for RSSDI Delhi, and besides being an associate editor for the International Journal for Diabetes in Developing Countries, her special interest lies in women and diabetes health, diabetes and pregnancy, and technology in diabetes. Dr. Shalini.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that warm introduction, Manoj. So, of course, the topic assigned to me is minimally invasive strategies and what does the future hold for us in this field. Of course, no financial disclosures, but yes, my disclosure is I am not a researcher like the previous speaker. I am the clinician, so a user of technology on the other end, for the people who need to be benefited with these technologies. And let me start by actually quoting the tech man we owe a lot to, Steve Jobs, who said, I think the biggest innovations of the 21st century would be an intersection of biology and technology. A new era is beginning, and yes, we are in that era where actually biology and technology have amalgamated so well to improve the quality of life of all our patients with diabetes and all the other disorders as well. So when it comes to the glucose monitoring technologies, I think we need to understand that advanced and effective diabetes management needs comprehensive understanding and monitoring of glucose control. And that is where I remember the days, 90s, when I was an intern, and we used to do the Benedict's test, taking urine samples and looking at the big reds and the greens to decide on the glucose levels of our patients. And then as interns, drawing blood early morning before the rounds could happen to actually look at the plasma glucose estimations from the lab. And we now have the biomarkers, again, dependent on blood, HbA1c, glycated albumin, fructosamine, and so on and so forth. But now we've moved on to ambulatory glucose profiling, to continuous glucose monitoring. Life has become so much easy. So I think an integration of technology with biology is what gives a good quality of life to our patients, and this is what all of us have adopted so well. So if you look at the evolution of CGM, 90s was the time when we had the glucometers, and then 1999, just at the beginning of the 20th century, came the professional CGMs. We had the first real-time CGM coming in the early 2000s, 2013. The integration of continuous glucose monitoring with insulin pumps happened. And then the Libre flash glucose monitoring system changed a lot of way glucose monitoring was done, because we realized that just doing a plasma glucose, just doing a fasting postprandial and an HbA1c is not enough. We actually understood time in range. We looked at the peaks, we looked at the troughs, and we knew there's more to HbA1c as the gold standard for diabetes control. And then, of course, we've been moving on, flash glucose monitoring, patients in the US 2017, the approvals came in, and then the hybrid closed loop systems, and the automated insulin devices with the integrated glucose monitoring with insulin pump deliveries, and so on and so forth. So if you look at the milestones in CGM delivery, the first CGM, the Minimate Professional CGM SF, which was available in 99, only had a 72 hours wear time. So every 72 hours, you need to change a sensor. And that's when technology keeps innovating and innovating and innovating to improve your patient's quality of life, to get more and more accuracy. And then 2006 was the Dexcom sensor, 3 days variability. Move on, 2008, the Abbott Laboratories Freestyle Navigator went up to 5 days. And then 2012, we had the 7 days, Dexcom again going up, and then now we have the 14-day sensors, and very recently the Eversense US FDA approved the 90 days sensor. So that's how over time, as technology advances, the wearability of sensors has actually become a very important factor in actually the acceptance and adherence to CGM technology. And 2024, it's no more for diabetics. Now we have CGM, Stelo systems, and a few more that I'll show you, which are actually approved for people who do not even have diabetes, for simply looking at their glucose spikes, looking at the troughs, kind of regulating their lifestyle, eating right, and all those things. So an overview of the glucose sensing methods that are available today. We've moved beyond the convention methods of, GTTs and HbA1cs and plasma glucose to have electrochemical methods, optical methods, and all these other methods that you see. It's a busy slide, each of them having their own advantages as well as disadvantages. To put it very simply, the common Libre and Dexcom sensors that all of us have been using, these are the electrochemical biosensors. The sensor is implanted in the subcutaneous tissue to monitor glucose levels in the interstitial fluid. So the enzyme-coated sensor oxidizes glucose molecules. This generates an electrical signal through electron transfer, which is proportional to the glucose level. And the transmitter then transmits this data to an external device. And there are algorithms that convert this signal to glucose readings that the patient can see on the screen, either in his phone or on the readers. So these electrochemical biosensors have actually evolved through 4 main stages through the different electron transfer mechanisms. So you have the classic glucose oxidase sensor, and then the mediator-driven one, and then the direct sensor with the direct electron transfer, and eventually non-enzyme glycose sensor. This seems a little complex, but let me just simplify this. So the first generation electrode sensors that came in, these used glucose oxidase and oxygen as the enzyme's cofactor. So when the electron transfer happened, basic limitation for these was dependence on natural oxygen availability. And of course, these were actually prone to a lot of interference from other electroactive substances in the fluids. So that's when the enzyme-based biosensors that used synthetic redox mediators, ferrocene, quinones, methylblue blue, all of these actually replaced the need for oxygen. So the limitations of the first generation, where there was dependency on oxygen, was taken care of. The interference was taken care of. However, leaching of these redox mediators in the in vivo CGM monitoring systems was a huge issue, stability and toxicity issues, and therefore eventually we had to move on to more and more innovations, wherein the third generation direct electron transfer mechanisms were sought. So these actually eliminated the need for redox materials. And that is where again now here the main challenge was actually having a stable system wherein the direct electron transfer could have happened. And again, this was complex, a lot of complexity involved, costs were huge, and that is why it did not really take on. And that is why now we've moved to sensors that are based on non-enzymatic electrodes modified with nanomaterials such as metals, alloys, metal oxides, and all these other polymers that are capable of conducting enzyme-like reactions under extreme conditions. Now, of course, stability, selectivity, and structure of the nanomaterials used is still being studied. So these may significantly impact the performance of the sensors and detection of glucose. So therefore, technology still needs to innovate and evolve. If you look at the today's currently available commercial sensors that are available globally in different markets, we have 3 main players. So we have the Dexcom sensors, we have the Abbott sensors, and the Medtronic sensors. As you can see on your screen, most of them are US FDA approved. All of them have a warm-up time varying between about 1 to 2 hours. You can see the sensor life is approximately 2 weeks for most of them. Calibrations are no more needed, so this is a step beyond the earlier generation sensors where calibrations were a major hurdle to the ease of using the sensors. Most of them are now integrated with insulin pumps, so that's something which is a boon for our people with type 1 diabetes who are on pumps. So you have sensors that integrate with the pumps, kind of automated insulin delivery systems, and then each of them have their own CGM data platforms. So this makes remote monitoring very easily possible. So if your patient with diabetes is wearing a sensor and moving around, you can sit in your clinic, open up the platform on the screen, and remotely you can actually see his glucose profiles in real time and maybe communicate with your patient in case if he reaches out for any kind of help. Accuracy, a MARD of less than 10% is usually considered a standard good MARD, and for all of these sensors you can clearly see MARD between 7.9 to 9%, so clearly telling you that reasonably they're pretty accurate when it comes to the dependence of these values on taking insulin decisions or all the other decisions that you need to use the sensor for. All of them come with alarms and alerts, so a hypoglycemia or a hyperglycemic excursion, your patient can be warned of. And of course, prices is a challenge still in a lot of countries where the patient has to bear out-of-pocket expenses for using these advanced technologies. Now, as we move on to the newer innovations, more and more biomaterials. You can see the tears, saliva, blood vessels, interstitial fluid extraction, sweat-based sensors, and sensors that use physical methods are still in progress. And a lot of publications on each of these technologies you can find on the net. Now, of course, the idea is CGM technology is actually transforming diabetes care by offering real-time monitoring and trend analysis. The minimally invasive approaches are very, very important because they reduce patient discomfort and maintain high accuracy, which is very important. Integrating them with digital health, this is an era of AI. This is an era of digital technology. So smartphone apps, cloud connectivity, all of these enhance CGM accessibility and clinical decision making. Moving on to the very, very recent advances, closed loop systems, hybrid, we're hearing a lot about this in the IDF sessions here, the AID models, the hybrid artificial pancreas devices, CGM data automatically adjusting insulin delivery. So this makes the life of our type 1 diabetic patients very, very simple. And then of course, prolonging the sensor life is very important. So I showed you how from 3 days we've gone up to 14 days, and we all know the Eversense CGM approved by the US FDA works for 90 days. And just last year, they've actually published data on a sensor that could last a year, a 365-day sensor. So you just put a sensor once and for the year, your job is done. I mean, just imagine how it could change lives for people. Moving on, we have the microneedle-based system. So these are basically interstitial fluid-based sensors. These actually involve extracting the interstitial fluid from the subcutaneous tissue to monitor blood glucose using minimally invasive methods such as reverse iontophoresis and microneedles. These are also being developed. There's a lot of literature coming in. This is what it looks like. So you have the PK Vitality K-Watch. This is something like a watch that the patient wears on his wrist. Still in development and focuses on combining lifestyle and glucose monitoring. Clinical trials are ongoing in Europe. The mechanism is simple. These are short, painless needles that extract interstitial fluid. These are much shorter than the traditional lancets. Cause little or no discomfort. Interstitial fluid contains glucose, so the real-time glucose analysis can happen via the biosensor, and the fluid is continuously sampled and analyzed. So this could be something revolutionary when it comes. Hydrogel interfaces. These again maintain consistent skin sensor interaction. They reduce the motion related signal artifacts. Gluco watches came in, but then sweating and movement and all of things could actually fudge the values. So again, more and more technology, more and more advancements happening. So maybe enhanced accuracy even in ambulatory conditions. And this is what exactly we need for our patients. Improved variability and flexibility. So I think a lot of technology is happening to make lives easier. Hot off the oven, the AccuCheck Smart Guide. This is again a 14-day glucose sensor with an app that incorporates advanced algorithms. So you can predict actually a hypoglycemia 30 minutes before it happens. And you can forecast the glucose trends for up to 2 hours ahead. So, you know, potential nighttime hypoglycemia, ketosis, those events you can probably predict and you can actually proactively prevent. Then the over-the-counter CGMs, you know, the US FDA recently approved over-the-counter CGMs for people who want to, you know, work on their lifestyle. who want to see what happens when they eat something, what happens when they do something. So you can actually monitor, and you do not need a doctor's prescription for these CGMs. So the Dexcom Stelo was the first one to be approved, and then you have Abbott's Lingo, the Librario OTC CGM systems, and these are some of these that you can see. So already approved by the US FDA to make lives better, to help you improve, to monitor glucose control, and to actually make changes. From moving from minimally to non-invasive, we've just had an excellent session on the non-invasive technologies. So basically you have the interstitial fluid based, you have the radio frequency based, and you have the breath based messages. You have the infrared lasers, you have the radio frequency based that actually penetrate the skin and may directly measure glucose concentration without actually punching, you know. So that's exactly what we're looking for, something that's completely non-invasive. Of course, Raman spectroscopy, OCT, near-infrared, mid-infrared spectroscopy, all these sensors. Recently, Sugar Beat by Numara Medical, this is a wireless, single-day use, non-invasive glucose monitoring system which uses a disposable skin patch, which is paired with a rechargeable transmitter. So this has again found its use and can be paired with a mobile app. So yes, technology is evolving. Apple also is looking for, you know, finding some kind of a non-invasive thing that can be incorporated with their Apple Watch. So there's lots happening, and there's more and more to come. Optical sensors. These are with machine learning. So you have the Raman spectroscopy using the light scattering. So what does it do? It just, you know, laser light is directed at the skin. It combines the light data with AI analysis. Detects glucose molecules by interacting with the laser light. So this is again still in developmental stages. Accuracy and calibration is something that is still being worked on. And this actually could be the truly needle-free CGM, you know, the actual holy grail for CGMs that we're actually looking for. Then again, you have the G-Wave by Hagar. This is the radio frequency CGMs, again, non-invasive, marred less than 7%. So, I mean, this could be amazing accuracy if this actually sees light of the day, still undergoing validation with the regulatory authorities. They're still in the process of, you know, filing for more approvals as studies are coming in. So friends, CGM usage, all these innovations, all these OTC sensors, they actually prevent opportunities to expand the application of CGM beyond routine diabetes management. So not only are these being used for early diagnostics, we're using sensors for predictive modeling, for diabetes education, integration into the AID systems that I talked of. They have been incorporated into research, development, and clinical care. And you know, they have a huge potential if you come to think of it. So all these commercialized glucose monitoring devices that are available today, you can see all of them working on different principles. Some are simply looking at continuous glucose monitoring through the interstitial fluid. Some are using NIR, some on the RI technology, electromagnetic, ultrasound. So all these different sensors are available. Different sites that you can put these sensors on, but look at the target population. So I think we're moving beyond using them for people with diabetes to actually healthy individuals. You know, people with pre-diabetes, people with obesity, people with metabolic syndrome. So this is, you know, going to help them actually prevent the burden of NCDs that we all keep talking about to kind of reduce the conversion from pre-diabetes to diabetes. So if you look at the CGM overview, we've moved beyond using CGMs only to look at glucose controls and decide on the insulin doses. We're using them for diabetes education. You can show in real time to your patient, this is what happens when you do this, this is what happens when you skip your insulin, this is what happens when you do not take your tablet, this is what happens when your diet is not good. So we're moving on from there to early diagnostics, to AID systems, to clinical research, and to precision medicine, predictive modeling. So predictive modeling, simply this is incorporating the CGM data and developing algorithms that are capable of forecasting glucose levels, glycemic events. So they employ machine learning methods. And basically, they analyze glucose trends in conjunction with other variables. So by integrating all these factors, predictive models actually can identify patterns that may precede a glycemic event. So if you can actually predict a hypo, you can actually see that the patient is going towards uncontrolled high sugars, can go into ketosis, and you can do something to prevent that. I mean, this could be a really important boon for our patients. Furthermore, by analyzing these longitudinal CGM data along with the demographic, clinical, and behavioral factors, we have machine learning models which can identify individuals that are at an increased risk for adverse outcomes, like I said. future glycemic control, severe hypoglycemia, glycemic variability. And with these insights, you can actually, as clinicians, intervene for targeted interventions, such as intensified monitoring, intensified tailored treatment plans for especially those high-risk patients. So imagine the burden of complications that can come down. So yes, minimally invasive glucose monitoring has its benefits. Reduced pain, discomfort, continuous glucose monitoring. You have data available 24/7 to what exactly is happening. Improved diabetes management, reduced complications, and the best part, better quality of life. You know, they don't have to keep pricking and checking all the time, so it's just available to them. They're carefree, you know. All you need to do is, as of today, just scan and see your glucose levels, and now you have the zero scans. So you just have the glucose control, your glucose monitor on your phone, on your screens, and the automated devices where you don't even have to do anything. The device is seeing it and the insulin delivery is being controlled. Of course, there are challenges and considerations when you use technology: sensor accuracy, reliability, placement of the sensor. There are sites that the sensors are approved for, so you need to understand that you cannot put it everywhere that you want to. Of course, off-label sites are being tried. Maintenance. Cost and accessibility is definitely an issue for a lot of countries, especially Southeast Asia, where it is healthcare is completely out of the pocket. And of course, user adherence issues. We've had some patients who've come back and said, no, I do not like this because I get anxiety when I see so many data points. You know, every time I eat, you know, I just want to see what's happening. And when I see that spike happening, it gives me anxiety. So yes, that's one end of the spectrum. But then essentially patient comfort and insights are very, very important. Of course, with technology, with improvement, we need to understand responsibility. Ethical, regulatory, and patient acceptance aspects are very important. You need to balance innovation with responsibility, and today is an era of data privacy. So, of course, ensuring that the patient CGM data remains protected and confidential is very, very important. So, confidentiality of all the data that we have for our patients, you need to be very, very sensitive to that. So, using any of that CGM data, you need to have consent of your patient. That is very, very important today. Regulatory approval processes need to be stringent for approving any technology, and of course, patient acceptance and usability is very important. So the future is definitely bright when it comes to minimally invasive CGMs. So we've moved to the non-invasive glucose sensing. We're looking at sweat, we're looking at saliva, tear-based glucose monitoring that my previous speaker talked about. We're looking at extending the usability of the sensor. So the longer lasting sensors, I talked about the potential Eversense 1-year sensor, and maybe we can have more. And then the AI powered predictive analytics, which can actually make life easy. So just a peep into the future, the sweat-based sensors, the tear-based sensors, and saliva-based sensors that my previous speaker talked about. All these companies who are actually working on advancing the minimally invasive CGM. So you can see different technology focus and different companies about Dexcom, Senseonics, Pika Vitality, Hagar, all of them working at sensors in different stages of development. So friends, to summarize, CGM has revolutionized the way we manage diabetes, and now this technology is widely used and acceptable. CGM gives us a versatile tool for improving individual care as well as advancing research. Its applications have extended beyond daily diabetes management to actually predictive modeling, to early diagnosis, to education, and developing automated insulin systems. Additionally, CGM today has become a basis of personalized precision medicine and a valuable resource in clinical trials. As CGM technology continues to move from invasive to minimally invasive to eventually non-invasive, its integration with AI and other health technologies holds a huge promise for furtherly transforming the diabetes care and improving patient outcomes. Ongoing innovations such as microneedles, implantable sensors, AI-driven analytics, all of them improve accuracy, acceptance, and wearability of these devices. And future accessibility goals include lower costs, better insurance coverage to improve global adoption of these new evolving tools. And let me end my talk by another quote. Medical science has proven time and again that when resources are provided, great progress in treatment, cure, and prevention of disease can occur. And this is what we are seeing when it comes to the ever-evolving, ever-advancing field of CGM technologies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shalini, for doing a great job. We have many questions for you. Everybody's anonymous. Are there new Chinese sensors of good quality compared to FSL? I'm assuming that is the Scan, Libre Pro, or Dexcom, since they are so cheaper.
I am sorry, I'm not in a position to comment on Chinese sensors or any other sensors. I mean, as of today, we have the Libre and the Dexcom sensors that we have also been using in India. Beyond that, I am not really aware of any major sensors that are being used today.
I can only interject, being in the US, at least for the past 38 years, I haven't seen any of the Chinese companies to come to the US to do proper studies that need to be done. I'm sure many of you know, US FDA is very strict as to how a CGM can be approved, and they're very long, hard studies, which many of you might have seen the data on. So to the best of my knowledge, at least, there is none that's available in the US.
One of the Chinese companies recently has entered the Indian market with the ICANN sensors, which is kind of the Libre sensors that we've been using, the Libre 1 sensors. The accuracy and all, they claim to be almost similar to the Abbott Libre sensors, and we've just started using them. So maybe once we have a little more experience, we'll be wiser to share about ICANN.
So I think that there continue to be questions about use and validation of, or the accuracy of the non-US FDA approved devices, and many available online, and should people use them, should physicians advise their usage? So there is a lot of questions coming up on that aspect.
Before using any sensor, I would request you to look at its literature and look at what is the MARD value for that. MARD is basically the relative difference, the mean relative difference between the values that are being shown by that particular sensor versus the standard, which could be a plasma glucose. So if the MARD value is less than 10, we consider that to be a reasonably accurate sensor. The lower the MARD, the better is the accuracy. So like I showed you in one of those slides, where most of the Dexcom and the Libre 3 has a MARD of about 7.9. So the others also range between 8 to 9%, which is reasonably good. So I think, of course, the regulatory approvals will actually give you sufficient confidence to use the sensor that you are using. But in case if the regulatory approval is still not there, maybe a MARD value could be one thing that could influence your decision to wear it. And then, of course, the wearability of the sensor, the warm-up time of the sensor, the need for calibration, or does it really not need a calibration? So all those features you can see before deciding on whether you want to use an unapproved sensor vis-a-vis an approved sensor.
So just to add to that, there are going to be multiple products in both in pharmaceutical and therapeutics, as well as devices today, which may not get or may not go for US FDA approval. How many here in the audience in hall use the sulfonylurea glycoside? Can I see a show of hands? How many people use glycoside? Right? How many here in the region use a DPP-4 like teneligliptin?
We've used it, so, let's be honest.
Yes, so
how
exactly.
Many of us use
So the point being, there are going to be
inhibitors.
There are going to be therapeutics and devices which are going to come from the region for cost reasons, as Professor Satish Garg said, that the studies in the US may be expensive. So unless these devices and therapeutics are specifically looking at the US market, they may not go ahead and do the studies for the US FDA approval. And hence today, as we move ahead, and this being an IDF forum where we are catering to the developing world and a lot of self-pay markets, we continue to be sensible as long as we're not compromising on accuracy. So do your own due diligence. If the product is available, try it out, probably compare with the other approved ones and see how it works for you all in the markets where these products would be available, and then decide on its use. Some kind of validation is going to be important, may not always be the highest one. I would request Dr. Garg to give his thoughts and the closing remark on this session.
So I would be careful for the simple fact that if they have not gone through regulatory approval from important regulatory bodies, there must be a reason other than the cost. If you take the cost away, sure, it is expensive to do these studies, and they're very tough studies. But despite that, I don't think that could be the only rationale. You're dealing with patients' glucose values, and they're going to make the decisions based on those glucose data that they're going to see on their smartphone or on their reader. So you cannot recommend a device that has not been properly tested to the best of your knowledge. So I would be careful. It's not only MARD, mean absolute relative difference is measured at very different levels in terms of rate of change of MARD. So there are many metrics that many of these devices, when they have come to the US, they have completely failed. For example, almost all the non-invasive glucose monitors that the previous speaker spoke about, spectroscopy or NIR, I've studied at least in the past 38 years, 10 of those. Some of you might remember a company called Sensionics. They had a spectroscopy size of a ring that they could probably put it on a watch, but it really never worked. They spent about $100 million and landed nowhere. So I think we got to be careful. You're dealing with patients' lives, so you cannot recommend something which has not been properly tested. That's my parting notes. Otherwise, I totally understand we're living in different parts of the world. The resources are limited sometimes, so it doesn't mean that you jeopardize patients' lives. Those are my parting notes.
Thank you. Thank you both the speakers, Dr. Shalini and Dr. Sheikh. And thank you all of you for being here in this hall and showing your interest in the use of CGMs and of course the future of wearable device. With this, we conclude this session and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.